They initiated a fake court verdict-like meeting with him, as if a sentencing for refusing the offer to publicly date at the dinner. He was told he would not be allowed to change his clothes, bathe, or use the toilet. They also told him as punishment for not accepting the offer to publicly date at the dinner, he would only be fed the main course from the dinner on request. Nothing else. They told him they would force him to pretend to marry Sadie illegally. They would force him to illegally name her a princess, pretend she was becoming his queen. They told him he would be forced to illegally pretend to name the ineligible baby a prince or princess, then pretend it became crown prince or crown princess as if he consented to it and it was legally eligible. Then when they pretended that was done, by forcing him to write invalid and irrelevant documents that could never be authenticated and become valid, they would kill him and make the ineligible irrelevant illegally inbred baby Kaiser. Ignoring the fact the invalid documents, if written, would have had to have been submitted to the German Supreme Court if following procedure to pretend, and would have been rejected if they ever arrived. They were intending to pretend that after it all the ineligible baby, its mother Sadie, and its irrelevant uncle Albert, became the Hohenzollern royal family afterwards. They were intending to pretend to steal my Hohenzollern royal family off Kaiser Adolf with the intentionally inbred child. They chose a deliberately inbred child because attempting to steal my Habsburg and my Romanov ancestors' royal families by abducting both and trying to replace them with imposters failed during World War I. It led to the execution of all the imposters involved in both instances, the Romanov royal family being declared presumed permanently vacant at the time, and my Habsburg royal family being dissolved as the constitutional monarchy of Austria and Hungary. They thought an inbred Hohenzollern Einstein child would be a more connected option, and give them a real child to pretend to steal my Hohenzollern royal family with. They let Kaiser Adolf regain consciousness after they conceived the illegally inbred child and confirming that they had chemically rendered him infertile via assaulting him for sperm samples and checking them under a microscope afterwards. Because he was legally childless and homosexual, they were attempting to pretend his only option for an heir and successor was the ineligible inbred child Sadie was gestating. That wasn't true. The child was ineligible under law from the instant of conception. It also wasn't true at the time theoretically due to Janet Podolsky having the firstborn child to his stolen sperm born 1907 when he was 18, Donna Podolsky, my grandmother. But that theoretical future possibility through Donna Podolsky only became a reality when I got born and became eligible in 1972. They were pretending that after they arrived in Berlin, Sadie would become Kaiser's spouse, the equivalent of Queen of Germany temporarily, until Kaiser Adolf was killed, and they pretended the child became the new Kaiser. They started leaving them alone together in the jail regularly. Kaiser Adolf chained up in his cell, and Sadie in a working-class posh spinster's apartment set up on the other side of the bars. Complete with dining and lounge furniture. They pretended the time they were left alone together was the equivalent of an engagement, preparing for their illegal marriage. Kaiser Adolf had to ask her for food when he was hungry, and was only ever given the main course from the dinner she hosted that he was abducted from when he did. French cubed beefsteak Rubik's Cube, like meatloaf, scalloped potatoes, and a choice of 3 green vegetables. Around 3 months after she got illegally pregnant with her inbred bred-to-be, they left her alone with Kaiser Adolf for a few hours of fake engagement time. She sat at the dinner table just out of reach of him through the cell bars. She went and found a knitting needle, sat at the table, and proceeded to abort the child with the knitting needle in front of him at the dinner table, making garbled noises of self-caused distress. When the child fully aborted, she dumped it on top of the dinner table, left it there, and tried to clean herself up. When the others working at the makeshift jail came back, she lied and told them it had aborted and there was nothing she could do about it. They spent a week or two in a distressed panic, accusing Kaiser Adolf of doing something wrong, took photos of the aborted fetus and then threw it in the garbage. They decided not to tell anyone outside the jail, waiting for Kaiser Adolf to be dragged to Berlin like a chained prisoner, with Sadie and her child being politely escorted along as if the new royal family pair, that there would never be a baby. They decided it might spoil anyone involved with the neo-Nazis who was waiting's fun. They also thought it would have stopped them rolling their eyes back in their heads thinking about what they thought might happen when the child was 18, in 18 years' time, and pretending to own my Hohenzollern royal family estate for the Einsteins. They violently victimized Kaiser Adolf in his cell, claiming to check if they could find a way to get a viable sperm out of him, always checking under a microscope to see if they could find one. It was pointless violence as they had already confirmed him as rendered chemically infertile before they let him wake up, after Sadie had gotten pregnant with his stolen sperm. They regularly filmed Kaiser Adolf being assaulted during pretend experiments to try to get a viable sperm out of him. The footage has been seen by millions over the years, most people almost completely unaware of what they saw. More recently, graphic footage of him being assaulted during those pointless acts of violence and assault have been converted to look like computer game footage people may be familiar with. Including computer game footage where Kaiser Adolf was left as the character, Adolf Hitler, for the game or film animation that used the footage. There are a large number of photographs as well. After they gave up on the idea of getting a viable sperm out of him, they charged people admission to see him in his cell through one-way mirrors installed in the walls of the room his prison cage was in. The jail was a converted underground subway-style train station. The area where the trains were supposed to run through on the track was walled off from the constructed station and had one-way mirrors installed. If people paid to go in, they could walk down where the tracks should have been and look to one side to see the words Adolf Hitler with an arrow written in novelty oversized Yugoslavian crayon on the wall, turn, and see him through the one-way mirror in his cell, chained up to the pulley system, still wearing the formal dinner clothes he was abducted in December 1943, with his top hat on the floor usually. Several arguments between the staff of the jail broke out during the months after the illegally inbred baby miscarried. To avoid any further unrest, prison governor Joe installed film cameras, and they were used as security cameras every day afterwards. Each shift change required them to be turned on and fresh recordings made. The building the cell Kaiser Adolf was held prisoner in was heated to around 31 degrees Celsius constantly, year-round. Its main effect on him was difficulty keeping track of the calendar and seasons. He ended up with 3 separate approximate counts of how long he had been in jail, keeping track as best he could. Sadie Einstein lived in a spinster's apartment outside the cell Kaiser Adolf was in, part-time. She did so the entire time he was held prisoner, except for regular breaks or holidays. She was a specialist cleaner by profession and always did some of the cleaning duties when at the jail. Prison Governor Joe made an official announcement to the prisoner Kaiser through the bars after the group of people with access to the jail finally gave up on the idea of finding a way to get a viable sperm via violent torture of the prisoner. Joe was brief and very blunt. He told Adolf that because there could never be an inbred baby, he could never leave. As if the plot that caused him to be abducted was a deal he had reneged on in some way. He told the Kaiser that if he didn't commit suicide, he would die in the jail, eventually. Kaiser Adolf started exercising in his cell daily.